Welcome back to the Blister and Muck podcast. I'm Jenny Mason, your host and the creator of the Blister and Muck series. This episode marks the exact midpoint of Season 1. If this show is made of 50% human and 50% horse, then we're smack in the centaur. When we signed off last week, Blister gave Muck an ultimatum. Either he revealed the entire truth about the fire that destroyed his home, or else he would have to face the nighttime streets, crawling with vicious wharf rats. What would you choose? Would you open up and spill what might be the darkest, most horrible secret stored in your heart, just to have a roof over your head and a cozy bed to sleep in? Or would you turn your back on those warm, glowing candles and trudge down the stairs? I know you're waiting for me to make light of the situation with some kind of inappropriate pun. Make no mistake, this show regularly brokers in dark humor, or gallows humor. Not because pain and sadness should be painted over with happy bubbles or glitter giggles, but because pain and pleasure are two sides of the same coin. In her book, Bouncing Back, therapist Linda Graham points out that the Chinese kanji for crisis is a mixture of the symbols for danger and opportunity. In other words, even the worst thing that you could imagine happening can also turn out to be the best thing that ever happened to you. Similarly, the poet Mary Oliver once wrote, "Someone I loved once gave me a box full of darkness. It took me years to understand that this too was a gift." Dark humor does not mask or hide sadness. It spotlights it. It points directly at the bad things happening and declares, "This is bad, but not hopeless." In other words, being able to laugh even a little at stress helps relieve the stress. Dark humor changes how we view gigantic problems. Snickering at them actually shrinks those massive obstacles into smaller issues we can deal with. For example, comedian Dimitri Martin points out, "I'm sorry and I apologize are the same thing, except at a funeral." Dark humor gives us the gift of resilience. And if that's a new word for you, resilience is when you can respond to pressure or tragedy quickly, creatively, and effectively. The moment you can laugh at a dark situation is the moment you have gained the upper hand on the impossible. "Humor is tragedy plus time," Mark Twain said. I hope, wherever you aren't going through dark times. But if you are, I hope you can laugh even a little. And if it helps, comedian Stephen Wright has some advice. He says, if at first you don't succeed, then skydiving definitely isn't for you. Episode 9 By Candlelight. Muck drew in a deep breath and wrapped his tail around his paws. Finally, he said, I was, the youngest of 4. The elder 3, all sisters, were triplets. They always left me out of their fun, unless putting me at the center of it meant I'd be in tremendous trouble. Most days they tied me up, then slid me down the laundry chute. I bucked at my bonds inside the binding bundles of sheets until one of the housemaids found me. When she scurried away screaming, My sisters retrieved me and put me in a dumbwaiter. Next, a bureau, then a credenza. Teapots, boots, mop buckets, and coal bins. I was criminally crammed everywhere. Ouch, Blister condoled. He deduced that 3 older sisters was equivalent to 3 scabs, with or without her rat pack. Indeed, Muck nodded. Another time, my sisters snuck into the nursery where the children played. They thoroughly thefted several toy boats, which they took to a nearby pond. Naturally, they excluded me, knowing how I savor sailing, but in their haste to have fun without me, they'd forgotten it was delivery day. All the village shops carted out fresh foods to restock the pantry. Usually, my sisters always beat me to the pantry and greedily gobbled up the choicest items, but that day I ventured alone to the pantry to select the most tremendous treat. Spindle repelled to the floor and sat at Blister's feet. Muck warily watched the spider. When he was sure the arachnid would not move, he continued. I dashed to the pantry and found a brand new pot of honey had arrived. Oh, I was so overcome with gratuitous greed. All this fresh honey that my sisters knew nothing about. I wanted that honey to be my select secret for days and days. I decided to conceal it where not even the kitchen staff would find it. Spindle stretched out between the rats as if fatigued from too much sitting. Then that night, when everyone was in bed, I returned to the pantry to partake of my treasure. It was going to be a fabulous feast, you see, so I spread a cloth napkin and lit a candle. Then I set about shoving the honey out of its concealment. Finally, I gathered up all the accompanying accoutrements, crackers, breads, cheeses, and fruits. Well, I was so staunchly stacked with goods, I couldn't see where I was going. I toppled off the shelf and crashed to the floor. My head painfully pounded something, and the last thing I remember was the sight of wayward berries bowling down the candle, which caught the napkin on fire, which then caught a nearby broom ablaze. And so the flames promptly proceeded to destroy the whole house. Everything and everyone. Muck's bottom lip puckered and trembled. But not you, Blister offered hopefully. How did you get out? A family of wild voles saved me. I presume they came from the woodlands to proficiently pilfer the ruins. When I came to just after dawn, we were on a hilltop. Through the gaps in the trees, I saw the smoldering wreckage of my former home. Muck sniffed. Spindle worked his way to sitting, this time nearer to Muck, who did not shrink away as he pressed on with his confession. Wild voles speak their own delirious dialect. Between us, we shared maybe a pawful of common words, but they offered to let me live with them. I did for a while, but I couldn't bear to be anywhere near the neighborhood. I eventually evacuated. I took a train and wound up here. Lubberly lost, I somehow made my way to the harbor. I stared at a steamship bound for Europe. It was like a massive magnet pulling me aboard. But it set off without me. I didn't know anyone in Europe, and besides, I didn't deserve a sea voyage, no matter how much I longed for one. I had just rancorously ruined so many lives. Muck's sniffing turned boggy. When I think of my parents and my simpleton sisters all sound asleep, the fast flames closing in, oh, I just can't bear it. He cradled his face in his paws. Spindle pressed his whole body against Muck's legs. Muck scooped up the spider and hugged him ferociously. Thip, thip, thip. The candles shed wax tears. Not knowing what else to do, Blister crossed the belfry to the thimble wash basin, where he washed his face and paws. The thimble always contained some supply of water, thanks to a spiderweb tube, which, like a rain gutter, siphoned dew or rain. Blister next wet a strip of cloth, which he handed to Muck. "You're covered in soot from the train station." Spindle perched on Muck's shoulder, while the rat wiped his face, whiskers, paws, the insides of his ears, and as much of his fur as he could manage. He seemed to be washing away so much more than soot. Blister hung the rag to dry on a sturdy string of Spindle's web. Then he ascended to a window-sill and sat with his back to the bell tower. After much hefting and laborious hoisting, Muck joined him. He gasped when he saw the bright light beads scattered across black rust. Having spent all its bluster, the wind returned to thrifty breezing. It was too dark to see the ocean, but Muck could hear it slosh itself to sleep. "I never realized Black Rust was such a sizable and beautiful bastion," he said, and sat next to Blister. After a while, every electric light in the city flickered. Then they snuffed out. "Nothing's reliable in Black Rust," Blister said. After many minutes, the hiccup in the city's power supply passed. Electric lights blazed steady once more. Spindle scuttled away to his web and returned with half a beetle carapace, which he placed on Muck's lap. "Oh, my," Muck gulped. "Thank you." Spindle tore off, ready to play fetch. He ran several circles. He hunched down and wriggled his back end. Finally, he jumped 3 times. "He wants you to throw it," Blister explained, as he took the carapace and flung it as an Olympian might throw a discus. Spindle retrieved the toy and dropped it on Muck's lap again. Muck threw it, and Spindle fetched it. He threw it again. Every toss brightened his spirits. "Oh, he's quite good." To challenge the spider, Muck chucked the bug's shell off the side of the bell. It ricocheted with a quang, but Spindle caught it in the air. "Bravo!" Muck cheered. "Tenacious talent, that's what you've got." When the game was through, Spindle bedded down in the curl of Blister's tail. The rats watched the fog haunt the city and dull all the street lamps. Lightning flickered on the horizon, exposing an armada of clouds sailing ashore. Thunder rumbled like cannon fire. "Rain," Blister commented. "We'd better turn in. Wharf rats love rain." Wharf rats! Muck did not so much repeat the words as spit them out, as if they were made of charred rubber. "I believe I saw those beastly blackguards one night." "Worst nightmare monster creature you'd ever seen?" Muck shivered as he nodded. "I'm amazed they didn't eat you." Muck beamed. "I crawled under some rubbish and played dead." "Very clever," Blister said. "For future reference, that won't always work. Wharf rats eat anything, alive or dead." Muck gulped. All his pride fizzled. When Blister hopped off the casement, Muck was not far behind. He knotted his tail around his paws and whimpered. Meanwhile, Blister emptied the candle box they had used as a bench earlier. From his cache of stolen cloth, he found an old shirt sleeve. This he stuffed into the candle box, making it a bed. Rain pattered on the cathedral. It dripped through the cross-cut holes in the dome and gently plonged the bell. "But, Blister, what's to prevent the prowling prats from finding us up here in the middle of the night? This rotting relic has no door to lock. Indeed, it barely has walls to withstand the storm." "Don't worry, Muck. We're perfectly safe up here. Wharf rats avoid lighted areas, and they tend to go only where they can smell food."
They can smell a cupcake crumb from 100 feet away. That's why I never, ever bring food up here. Tsp, tsp.
Raindrops extinguished some candles.
Help me move some of these candles, Blister instructed.
Muck obeyed, and they moved many of the lit candles under the umbrella of the bell. Blister slid into his own candlebox bed. Spindle ran excited circles over the covers until Blister scratched the soft patch around the 8 eyes. "You deserve profusions of praise for taking me in," Muck said. He squeezed into the bed Blister made for him.
Yeah? Well, it's just until morning. After that, you can head out.
Head out?
Hit the road.
Hit the road? But I thought that maybe, as you'd been so supremely sympathetic, that is, I assumed I would stay here.
Stay here?
The question burst so loud from Blister's mouth that it echoed around the underside of the bell.
Stay here, stay here, stay here.
Ha ha ha! Blister's sudden laughter chased away the dwindling echoes.
Stay here. Good one, Muck. No, in the morning, you go make your own way in the world. You're free now. You've got no one and nothing to hold you back. Trust me, Muck. You're about to have the best time of your life. Alone. Independent. Footloose and fancy-free. You're going to love it. Good night.
Blister rolled over abruptly. Muck was left saying good night to Blister's backside. He stared into the hollow of the bell, into the darkness where the candlelight could not reach. Tears began to well up. Spindle leapt from Blister's bed and scuttled onto Muck's chest. There he turned a few circles and promptly plopped down. Muck found he could not cry with a spider snuggled on his chest. He also found he could not sleep. Long after Blister and Spindle were snoring, Muck was still awake, listening to the raindrops plong the bell, watching the candles shrink to yellow wax stubs. Poor Muck clearly has a lot on his mind. His worries are just eating him up on the inside. I suppose he has insomnia. Then again, maybe it's just all those bright candles making him a light sleeper. Tune in next week. Can Muck convince Blister to let him stay? Or will they wind up on separate journeys? Speaking of journeys, summer is the perfect time for a road trip, and recently, Blister and Muck hit the road to visit the Rio Grande School in Santa Fe, New Mexico. We made a Zoom visit to Miss Ashley Pagoda's 5th and 6th grade classrooms. I want to give a big shout out to Sophia, Gabriel, Anisha, Ruby, Thomas, Anna Alice, Luke, Sasha, Holden, and all the other students who wrote some amazing animal explorations. If you'd like Blister and Muck to visit your school or your public library, head over to blisterandmuck.com and use the contact form. You can also let me know what surprised you in this episode. Feel free to share your best and worst puns, and I'll share them on the show. If you click on the red subscribe button, there's a probability you'll get $1 million, according to quantum mechanics. There's another probability that you'll get an email directly from the Blister and Muck producers as soon as the latest episode releases. If your family is planning a summer road trip, you can add this podcast to your playlists on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and just about anywhere podcasts are found. I am super stoked to announce that Blister and Muck is also now available on Google Podcasts. Special thanks to composer Roland Rudzitis for serving up the Blister and Muck theme song. Additional music from John Bartman and Mon Plaisir. Mark D'Angelo provided the wind, Daniel Simon and Jabba brought the fire sounds, Mike Koenig served up the thunder, rain, ocean, and electricity. Every day, every week, I am grateful for my family, friends, and fans. One for one and all for you.